welcome to this short tutorial on how to use Cosplayflex. This is a super great thermoplastic that can be used to build or make just about anything your little heart desires. And you just need a few things to get started. First of all, I always recommend a cutting board or a heat-safe surface to work on, whatever you've got lying around. This is an old cutting board that I started using for other craft projects such as hot glue that has turned into my cosplay board. You're also going to need a heat gun such as this one here. They are sold at most home improvement stores. A thin piece of craft foam is recommended, and we'll go over that, why that's recommended here in a few minutes. Good pair of scissors. And then, of course, your Cosplayflex, which I have here. I have cut a few pieces into some strips. We're going to be making a quick bracelet today. Yeah, let's get started. So this is a thermoplastic, which basically means you heat it up and you can form it to pretty much whatever you want. They're fairly thin pieces. It's a plastic and wood composite, and yeah, it's really great for making all kinds of things. The first thing I'm going to do, since I am making a bracelet for myself, is I'm going to kind of get a rough estimate of about how big my wrist is. I'm going to cut the piece a little bit bigger than my wrist. And I have larger wrists, so if you're doing this at home, you would probably not need as much as I am using. I'm going to cut the same piece on my other, and this can be cut with scissors, box cutters, X-Acto knives, depending on how detailed you want to get. I mean, a sharp kitchen knife would work well as also. Okay, so I've got two pieces here. One is slightly larger than the other. And we'll get to heating those up in just a minute. First, I want to show you exactly how it looks when it's heated up. So bear with me because heat guns can be a little loud. They do have a fan in them. So there's two sides to this. There's kind of a shiny side and more of a matte side. I tend to work on the shiny side more often, and I tend to heat up the shiny side more often. So we're just going to heat this up. Heat guns, as their name implies, do get very hot. So I just kind of wave it over, and this is one of my scrap pieces, and I'll show you why I'm doing this here in a minute. So as you can see, you might be able to tell from here, it's starting to kind of puff up a little in the middle. Again, here's a piece that has not been touched at all. And I just want to let it get warm, and it'll start to kind of get floppy, like a wet noodle. And that's good, that's what we want. So I'm heating up the shiny side. This is also why you want a cutting board of sorts, or something that is heat tolerable, because you don't want to burn the surface that you're working on. I'm going to flip it over just to get a little bit on the back. Cosplayflex becomes malleable at 194 degrees. So it is going to be a hot product when it's ready to start molding. So as you can see, it's kind of loosey-goosey. You can get it hotter than this. I'm going to leave it here. So from here, I'm going to do shiny side up, and I'm just holding it against my skin until it cools down a little bit. I have a lot of experience with heat from working in kitchens and with Cosplayflex, so I am okay to put it directly on my skin. It is recommended that you put a shirt sleeve or some kind of fabric on there if you are temperature sensitive. So we're just going to let this sit for a minute while it's cooling. And again, I'm just kind of forming it to my wrist. We'll let it cool and slowly take it off. And I didn't let this cool probably as long as I should have. As you can see, it's still pretty flimsy. I am going to use this water bottle here to kind of form that one, because I want to come back to that here in a little bit as to why we use that, the craft foam, like I was mentioning earlier. So that is the start of, basically I'm just going to show you the difference between a single ply and a double ply bracelet. So for this one, and actually because I need to get it off of my wrist, I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. Also, keep all of your little scraps, and we'll go over that here in a moment as well. So once you've got kind of a base for your bracelet, you want to cut a piece of fabric foam slightly smaller than your smallest piece. So again, I'm cutting this about a quarter, but like not even, like maybe an 1/8 of an inch shorter all around. And I will show you why here in a moment. So we're gonna do, so when I put the craft foam on top, you'll see I've got a little bit of a gap around, just a little tiny one, barely even noticeable in some spots. We're gonna put both of our pieces shiny side up. We're gonna put our craft foam off to the side, and we're gonna go ahead and heat these guys up. Again, you don't want to isolate the heat gun in any one spot because it will start to bubble and burn, but we'll go over that a little bit here in just a moment as well. And it gets a little sticky. The great thing about Cosplayflex is it does not stick to anything but itself. Typically, I should say, typically it does not stick to anything but itself. So we've got a little bit going here. We're going to turn that off. We're going to put our craft foam right on top of that shiny side. And again, this isn't going to stick super great because it's not built for that. So what we want to do is we want to flip that and invert it so that it is on top of our larger piece. Just like that. Now it's got a little bit of flexibility right now. We want to heat it up a little bit more because we want it to form to my wrist. So now we've got a sandwiched piece of craft foam sandwiched between my two pieces of Cosplayflex. I'm going to focus on the outer edges of this right now because that's what I'm going to be folding in to kind of create a seam. And again, this does start to become malleable at 194. To get it truly where you need it to be, it needs to be a little hotter than that. So just be aware of where your heat gun is so that you don't accidentally bump up against it. And right now I'm just going to take the edges of that bigger slice and fold them over onto the smaller one. So we're pinching down and pulling over. And it sticks, you'll feel it, like I can feel it sticking just a little bit to my my board, but once it cools a little bit, it'll peel right off. And it's starting to cool down quite a bit down on this end, so I might need to heat up those edges again just to get them folded over. And for this heat gun, a little bit goes a long way. So like I said, you don't want to get it boiling. That's going to be way too hot to work with. You're just kind of getting it so that you can roll that seam. And again, be careful that you don't get your fingers too close to the end of your heat gun after you've turned it off, or you will burn yourself. Pro tip, if you are prone to burning yourself like me, get a bottle of emu oil, like the large birds. It works wonders on burns of any kind. Sunburn, heat burn, oil burn, whatever. Okay, now that I've got my edges rolled, I'm just gonna go over with my heat gun again and kind of seal it. Really let it melt together. Push it in, really get that seam working on there. Now from here, you should be able to take the whole thing off the board. And again, it might stick a little bit, but for the most part, you should come off with a nice clean piece of sandwiched craft foam in between two pieces of Cosplayflex. Now this is still fairly malleable, but I want it to be a little bit more, so I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to heat it up a little bit more on both sides. And again, it'll get a little sticky. That's okay. That's kind of what we want. That's just to show that the plastic is melting enough that we can get it where we want it. You can see the orange glow from the heat gun on the thermoplastic, the Cosplayflex. That means that it's plenty warm enough. It should be plenty malleable. You can see a couple of bubbles starting to form there, and we'll address those here in a minute. So I'm gonna go ahead and form that to my wrist. And again, this is a little big, and that's okay because that'll make it easier to get on and off. So I'm just gonna let that sit for a minute and cool down on my wrist. While that's doing that, I'm gonna show you this other one that we did earlier. So this is formed. I mean, it's not formed great, but it has formed. It's not going anywhere. I could flatten it up again, but it's gonna bounce back because it's cooled enough. This is a single ply. You can do things single ply. In just a minute here, I'll take this guy off my wrist and you will see how much more rigid it becomes when you put that extra layer of the craft foam inside. So give it just a minute to cool off here. What I need is a little tiny freezer next to me that so even without fully cooling, you can just see how much more stability you're gonna get from doing that extra layer. So we're just gonna let that sit and cool over to the side here. Now remember, I said save all of your scraps. The teeniest, tiniest little bit of scraps can be used to do the next phase of your build. So this would be a pretty boring bracelet if we just left it like this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use these little scrap pieces and make some embellishments. Like I said, Cosplayflex becomes malleable at 194. The hotter you get it, the more malleable it becomes. If you get it hot enough, it will turn into basically Play-Doh and you can mold anything you want with it. So let's get these super heated. Starting to see that orange glow on there. You can start folding it in on itself. And this is where it's best to use a pair of cotton gloves or something of the like when you're handling it if you're not used to hot temperatures. So you can get it all squishy. And you can, the great thing about this is if you get it a little, if it cools down too quickly, or if what you make is not something that you end up liking, you can just reheat it and reform it just like Play-Doh. It is very much like Play-Doh, except for the fact that it's really hot. So just be aware of that when you're working with it, and plan for that. If you're sensitive to temperatures, like I said, a pair of like white cotton gloves works wonders. Also keeping a bowl of cool water nearby, so that you can dip your hands into that in between heatings would also be helpful. So right now I'm just kind of pinching it to make a little star gem kind of thing here. And this is a very quick little build, not going into too much detail, but just kind of showing you how the product works. All right, so we've got our cool little star gem, and the best thing about this, the best thing about this is in order to get it to adhere to your base, like your bracelet, which already like, oh, that's stuck. So this is still a little warm, mostly because it's right next to where I'm working with the heat gun. Give it 24 hours, that's gonna move just enough to get your hand in there. But then it's gonna form back to your wrist. How the best way to get Cosplayflex to stick to itself is heat it back up again. So we're gonna heat up the back of the star here. And you don't wanna heat it so much that it turns into a puddle, but you wanna get it, that sticky bit. So it's starting to get a little sticky. As soon as you see that orange glow, that probably means it's good enough. I'm gonna do the same thing on my wrist band. And then you just take that and push it on. And you can do this, I mean, this is just kind of a simple little star rock star bracelet kind of thing, and on my next video I will show you how to finish it. But for now, that is your basics on how to work with Cosplayflex. It can be used to build armor, shields, bracelets, jewelry, pretty much anything you can put your mind to. And if I wanted to do more on this, I could just heat up more Cosplayflex and do edging or embellishments. So yeah, that is your Cosplayflex 101. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back next week with how to finish it.